This short video is designed to help you get the most from your Olympus or OM-TG camera, and it's focusing on macrophotography. The TG 5, 6 and 7 model cameras haven't changed much. There have been some enhancements to the video features, but not much to any of the still features, so it doesn't really matter which one you have. I don't normally talk about individual cameras, but these cameras really are shirt pocket marvels. It's amazing how much they've managed to cram into them. I'm going to go quite quickly through this, but you can replay the video as many times as you want, and it might be helpful to do it with the camera in front of you so you can experiment and you can stop and start the video. Photography isn't only about the camera, that's only part of the story. The way I illustrate this is always use the following story. If you went to a Michelin-starred restaurant and had the best meal of your life, would you ask the chef, what oven do you use? I'm sure he's got a pretty good oven, but that's not the only thing that determines the quality of the food. Photography is very like that. So here's a short summary. There's no such thing as a perfect camera that does it all. Some cameras are designed to be all-round cameras, which tends to mean they're not particularly good at any one thing. So here's my version of the TG cameras. They are very, very good for macrophotography, and that's the subject of this video. They're poor for taking photographs of birds, unless the bird is very close to you. You're going to need a longer lens. They're poor, in my experience, for landscape photography, although you can use them for that. I find I get better results using my mobile phone than a TG camera for landscapes. They're terrible for selfies. Use your phone. They are very good for underwater photography, but that's beyond the scope of this video, so we won't talk about that anymore. Now, in general, photography, of course, is writing with light. That's what it means. And you can never have enough light. There is an exception to that I'll come back to. One essential extra that I would say that you definitely need to buy with the camera is the Olympus LED light guide. This small plastic attachment that fits on the front of the camera can be bought separately. It costs a few pounds, but it's definitely worth it for macro photography. Now, the only exception to the rule that you can't have too much light is unless you do have too much light. The difficulty is the camera and the light source is so close to the subject that it causes problems. It causes something called specular highlights, where all the highlights are burnt out. I don't know how clearly it is to see the two panels on the left here, but you can see that a lot of the detail has been lost in the left-hand panel that you can see in the right-hand panel. I've made a small attachment to my TG light guide. It's just a simple piece of plastic packaging foam that I've cut out and fitted over the top of the light guide. I don't always use it, but sometimes it can help. Here's some basic photography stuff I need to talk about before we get on to talk about the controls. This is a photography classic, the exposure triangle. A photographic image is a balance between the shutter speed, the lens aperture and the ISO, which is the sensitivity, or if you're into electronics, the gain of the camera. You can balance all of these, so if you increase the shutter speed you get less light into the camera, so you'll probably need to increase the aperture, that's to say decrease the number of the aperture but open the aperture to get more light in. Likewise, if you increase the ISO, the sensitivity, the image becomes lighter, but there are consequences for that, which I'll talk about in a minute. I'm just going to talk about the basic controls of the camera that you use mostly for macro photography. The TG manuals, if you didn't get one when you bought your camera, are available to download online, and they're very detailed, but I can't go through the whole thing. What I really want to emphasize is it's important to take control. If you let the camera make all the decisions, and it's easy to do that by just leaving all the controls on auto, then you won't get the best results from it. So here's a short walkthrough of some of the most important controls and the ones you should use most frequently to adjust your macro photographs. We'll start with this OK button in the lower left hand back panel of the camera. If you press that, it reveals this menu on the right hand side, and that gives you access to a number of things such as white balance, autofocus versus manual focus, image quality, and so on and so forth. I'm going to first of all talk about ISO, the sensitivity of the camera sensor. You can scroll up and down using the rocker switches adjacent to the to the OK button to select which of the functions you want, and then click OK to bring up the additional menu. Here I've brought up the menu for ISO. I only really use two settings on this camera. If I'm in a sort of controlled setting and I've got plenty of time and nothing is moving around, I use the 100 ISO, the lowest speed of the camera. This will give you the highest quality image. If I'm out and about and I've got less control and I'm possibly struggling to reach underneath something to take a photograph of it, I set it on auto ISO and let the camera make some decisions. That gives me the best balance overall, but it won't always produce the highest quality image. So I suggest you don't leave it on auto all the time. Just use it when you need it. The other control that you can get here on the right hand menu is the lighting, and the one you want using the light guide is the LED light on. You're not going to use the flash, you're just going to use the LED light, and that appears when you depress the shutter halfway to take a photograph. And this is continuous lighting, which will be best for macro as long as you use the diffuser in the light guide. The wheel at the top of the camera, you can see that yellow arrow are pointing to the wheel on the top of the camera, allows you to adjust exposure compensation, and this is particularly important. You can go up and you can go down, so you're adjusting the amount of light in the image. Here I've set it on plus 0.7. There's no real rule about this, you need to experiment. So I would suggest actually taking a series of images. There are occasions when you actually need to turn the LED light off, but mostly you're going to have it on. But I would vary anything between 0, 0.3, 0.7. Those are typically the settings I use. So don't just take one image, take several images at different exposures and see which gives you the best result. Now the menu button at the bottom on the right of the back of the camera gives you access to the full controls and settings for everything that the camera can do. I don't have time to go through all of that now, that's beyond the scope of this video. The info button shows you can use this to change the display on the screen, and you can have the information on the screen that you want. Some people like lots of information, some people like the screen to be uncluttered so they can see the image. Here at the bottom of the screen I've got what's known as the histogram. That's a very good way of judging the exposure as well as using your eyes. The wheel on the right hand side suggests the mode that the camera is set in, and the one we're going to want for macro photography, I'm not going to talk about all the others, is the microscope setting. So if you click on the microscope setting you get a number of options. The first one is microscope mode, and this gives you a single exposure at a magnification of up to 4 times. So that's something you may use frequently. The ladybird mode is focus stacking, and here the camera takes a series of images and then combines them to make a single image. The advantage is it gives you an extended depth of field, and that's very important with macro photography where the camera is very close to the subject. The problem is that neither the camera nor the subject can be moving. They must both be absolutely still. So sometimes the microscope mode is better. However, although it says tripod use is recommended, you don't need to use a tripod. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. It really destroys the portability of these cameras to have to lug a tripod around with them. The next mode under the microscope setting is focus bracket. And the difference between focus stacking, where the camera creates a combined image, and focus bracketing is that the camera takes a series of images in focus bracketing, but it doesn't combine them. You would need to use software on a computer to combine them. So if you don't want to get into that, I wouldn't use that mode. The last mode, the microscope with a magnifying glass, is a digital zoom, the sort of thing you can find on mobile phones. This degrades the image, and I wouldn't use it to take photographs. I never do, but it can be useful on occasion as a sort of digital hand lens. If you want to check a detail on something at very high magnification, it can be useful, but I wouldn't use it to take photographs. Macro images invariably benefit from some post-processing, but we'll get on to that in a second. The most important thing is, because the camera is so close to the subject, any movement is magnified. And it's very, very important to keep the camera and the subject still. The way you do that is brace yourself. Windy days are a problem if stuff is blowing around and you're outdoors, and frisky insects are a problem as well. If they're running around, you're likely to get blurry photographs. You certainly can handhold focus stacked images and macro images on these cameras because they're light and relatively easy to hold, but it's best if you brace against something. So put your hands or your wrists on a solid object. Try not to wave around in midair, because then you'll get fuzzy pictures. Invariably, macro images tend to lack contrast and a bit of detail, and they benefit a lot from post-processing. If you look at photographs that are published on social media, they're not directly out of camera. They will have been edited. Now, you don't have to do that, and it's certainly a good idea to produce the best image that you can in the camera. But a little sharpening, maybe some adjustment of the exposure will certainly improve the quality of images. But if you don't want to get into that, then just use the tips in this video to produce the best images you can. So I hope this short video has helped, and I hope you will be encouraged to use your TG camera for taking macro photos.